All right, here we are. Two Canon L series lenses, the 24-70 f2.8 and the 24-105 f4. Both of these lenses are absolutely incredible in their own ways. They both have advantages. And today we're gonna talk about my thoughts on which one of these lenses you should buy. And it kind of more broadly applies, I think, or at least my experience now having shot on the RF platform for about 3 years now. Let's see, when did the R come out? 19? Yeah, a little over 3 years now. I'm gonna give you 3 scenarios to think about when making a purchase decision, trying to cover this focal range, whether you wanna go with the f4 and have a little bit more focal length and save a lot of money, or if you wanna go with the f2.8, lose some of that focal length and definitely spend a heck of a lot more money. And I'll say this right out the gate, and I feel like this is super important because it's something that I didn't really fully grasp early on in my photography career, and that is that a fast aperture is only 1/3 of the equation when it comes to subject separation. And I know that's a really important thing and everyone can be tempted to move towards that faster aperture, but the other 2 pieces are just as important, which is focal length and distance to your subject, and along with your subject's relationship to their background. So the first scenario 1 that I think you need to be thinking about lenses and which one of these lenses to go with is like weddings or events. If you're doing professional event and wedding photography, you have a book, or maybe you're second shooting for someone you've lined up for a season, you know that work is coming in, and maybe you just got your first R series or RF series camera, I think this lens, the RF 24-70 f2.8, is probably gonna be your best bet. And not just because it has that faster aperture and is able to give you sort of like a really nice focal length. A couple things that I've noticed, I think this lens, I end up like referring to it as my like church and events lens. Anytime I like do something for my church, this is always the lens that sort of goes on my camera. And now, while I don't shoot weddings personally, I have many friends who are photographers that have, and I've been in a ton of weddings, and you guys have seen some of those videos as well. But I've definitely shot at my fair share of events and paid event shooting type stuff. While I'm not gonna get into in this video why I chose the 24-70 f2.8 over the 28-70 f2, I do have that video on my channel and I will link it down below so you guys can see what that comparison looks like. But I think this is more of a conversation for the beginner, the person who's just diving in, just getting started, especially if you're second shooting or if these are your first wedding photos, wedding photography opportunities. The 24-70 is, I think, the best bang for the buck. It's gonna narrow you in on that focal range. And in my experience, you're not really shooting past like 100. A lot of wedding photographers that I know are typically shooting with primes. They're gonna shoot with like a 35 and maybe like an 85 at a faster aperture. But if you're not quite there yet and you wanna feel out your style, I think this is a great lens to have, especially if you can't afford those high-end primes right out the gate. This lens is gonna get you, I think, most of the way there. It also can really help you out if you're hybrid shooting. Maybe you need to shoot a little bit of video as well if you're second shooting. This particular lens is gonna do great in that department because it does have image stabilization. You don't get that with the 28-70. You aren't gonna get that with any primes. And you can pull off a lot with that IBIS image stabilization and like the R6, the R5, maybe the R3 if you have that, but you're probably not starting out on that. And even if you don't have that, even if you're shooting something like the RP, this lens is going to at least give you that opportunity to have some image stabilization, which is going to help in those event scenarios. Wouldn't that be cool if like you were at a wedding and you're able to shoot like a bunch of like 100-200, 70-200 stuff? I'm sure people have done it. I'm sure it's a look, but typically this focal range right here for events, 24-70, is bread and butter for those types of things. I do kind of wish, I've said this before, that Canon made like a 35-85. I think that would be a really cool lens to have specifically for events and portraits and things like that. But we don't have that. We have the 24-70 f2.8, and it's still a pretty awesome lens. Now, if you're doing more product photography, lifestyle photography type stuff, if you're working with brands, something that I've built my personal brand and portfolio work off of, we did that all on this, the 24-105 f4. And here's why I think this is actually the better choice over the 24-70 f2.8. This lens is a part of that Canon L series pedigree that Canon is known for. It is not a skimp. It is not a sacrifice on quality across any of the lenses in the L series category that overlap with it. It is f4, so you're not gonna get as much of that subject separation. But what I've found is shooting outdoors, especially whether it's overcast or sunny, f4 is more than enough. And if you have the outdoors and the space to put some space between you and your subject and your background, you can absolutely get some isolating shots still at f4 and at that 105 or even down to like 85, 70. And that is because the separation is not just aperture. It is aperture combined with that focal length and then applied to your composition with your subject. I wish someone had told me that in at least as plain as hopefully I'm telling you guys that today. But yeah, this lens is super light. It feels like it's almost like half a pound lighter than any other L series lens that I've ever held. So it's great if you need to hike up a mountain or just need to be out on a shoot all day. Having this on your camera body all day is gonna save your wrists, your back, just that ever so slightly more. And you're gonna save about $1,000 by buying this lens over something like the 24-70 or the 28-70 or really any other L series zoom lens that Canon offers today. And I will say this, there is a 24-105 zoom lens that has a variable aperture. And I think that's where you don't necessarily get the benefits of what this L series 24-105 has to offer. That constant f4 is a superpower at those higher focal lengths. More than enough compression. It is definitely different than having like that, I think it's 7.1 or 8 somewhere, that the top end of the non-L series version of this glass closes down to. And remember, this is just to get started. This is to sort of find your footing with the RF platform. If these are the sort of first two lenses that you're looking at for your first RF piece of glass, and maybe you haven't been shooting previously on like a full frame camera like the old like 5D Mark IV or really any type of EF full frame camera, if you're just getting your toes in the water, this lens is great because you are saving that money and you'll be able to then make that L series quality work and apply that extra $1,000 you're gonna save to the prime that you want. That's gonna get you the right sort of look. And then you'll be able to start prototyping your work. Hey, do you like shooting at 50, 35? Are you finding that you're using a lot of that compression? Maybe you want to save up for a 70-200. I wish I had spent more time in those higher focal ranges. When I first started out, I was really like enamored with 35 and 50 for some reason with this lens, and I was just stoked how good it looked even at those more normal focal lengths. But I think had I been listening to myself, if I go back and tell myself that, I think I would have jumped into the 70-200 a lot quicker. And as you can see right there, it's in the arsenal now, but I have this lens to thank for that. And I still use this lens to this day. My wife still uses this lens today as well. Fantastic lens, never giving it up. It's awesome. So finally, if you're a hybrid shooter, if you're someone who's not just gonna be doing photography, some type of professional photography, but if you're also doing video, maybe more on like the vlogging YouTube side, not necessarily doing cinema stuff, though I have used the 24-70 in some scenarios to do some like second cam type shooting stuff, and you'll get, you know, with that wider aperture, a really good looking image. But with that said, I think if you're hybrid shooting, I would still recommend to start on the 24-105. And here's why. If you're a YouTuber or anyone who wants to do vlogging or creating video for even like Instagram or TikTok or whatever it is, and you want that mirrorless full frame quality, I shoot most of these videos, if not almost all these videos recently, at f4. Even though I have on the camera right now the 15-35 f2.8, I think I have every f2.8 zoom lens that Canon makes for the RF platform. I still shoot all these videos at f4, and that is because I want to have my focal plane for my body and what I'm doing to be wide enough that you don't constantly get that focus breathing. That can just be really annoying. At least as a viewer, I don't enjoy it. I know a lot of my viewers don't enjoy it. They like that you can have a sort of locked off shot and they can just focus on you, and they're not like, okay, the camera's focusing and what should I be looking at right now? I find at these wider focal lengths, like I'm shooting this at 20 right now, I find that these wider focal lengths kind of need a stop down aperture to make that focal plane a big enough distance for a human being to sit in it with maybe something that they're talking about. Now that said, you may be saying, hey, I don't have the best lighting in my studio or in my van. If you're doing like van life or tiny house, I've talked with several people who do van life and tiny house, and that was a concern. But if you are buying the f4 over the f2.8, you're saving $1,000. You can afford even like a really nice aperture light, which is what I have right here. I have an Aperture 120D with a nice little softbox light dome. You could get something cheaper than that, but you could even afford a very nice lighting setup for your studio or wherever you're gonna be filming. And that's gonna give you a lot more control than just opening up your aperture and hoping that something looks a little bit better. Your scene will look better with a stop down aperture and controlled light than just trying to open your aperture and then having to find a light source that looks good. This is, I think, a critical thing that a lot of people don't necessarily think about right out the gate when they're buying their glass. They're only thinking about how the glass can solve the problem for them. And I think if you think of the holistic picture of what you're trying to make, you know, this is even money that you could save and then invest in audio. Like I'm using a boomed microphone right now to a little Apogee interface that makes these videos sound a lot better. I went through, so many Rode microphones. They're like Rode Video Micro, the Rode Video Mic Pro Plus. Great microphones, but it's nice to have like an actually boomed microphone. And again, if you aren't trying to solve all the problems in the lens and you can build an environment around you where you can get the job done, I think just as good with an f4 lens, use that money to build out the set and the space. And I think that's the better investment for most people. So I'm curious how many of you are starting out on your photography or maybe some type of hybrid photo shooting journey. Leave in the comments down below what your subject and work is going to be or what you're looking to do. I'd be curious to hear from you and love hearing from all of you guys. If you're starting a channel, leave a comment down below so I can follow you. I always love seeing just other people get started on this platform, making awesome content and things like that. And I'm curious which lens after watching this video you would choose. Would you go with the 24-105 f4 or would you be going after that 24-70 at the f2.8 or something totally different? Leave it down in the comments below so I know. And with that, I just want to say thank you to everyone who has already subscribed to this channel. You guys are awesome, as you know. I've been going through everything that's been going on with my leg. I haven't been able to go climb mountains this summer and do all the other fun stuff that you've originally known me for. I'm sort of working around that and thankfully having some friends jump in to help make some cool content for this channel, at least for the rest of the year. I'll still be daily involved in every single video, but I think I miss having some of that outdoor influence here. So we'll get that back. I'm also really enjoying making a lot of the content here in the studio with like the library notes and doing some of my journaling and other things with that. And I don't want to go too far on the productivity side of things. So don't worry if that's like a concern of yours. As much as I love photography for all the positive effects that it's had, not just for my business, but for my mental health, I kind of I'm diving in a little bit more with like the journaling and the reading and sort of like the stuff that I do in my daily practices for my own mental health, and hopefully make that all for you. So if that's something that you're into, this channel, subscribe to it, and we can go on that adventure, that journey together. With that, please be kind both in life and in the comments below, and like this video to send good vibes across the internet, and we'll do it again soon. Later. I will say one thing that I very much appreciate with both these lenses. Hear that? That's a lock, which should be on the 15-35 and the 14-35. I don't think the 14-35 has a lock either. I know they're short throws, but every zoom lens should have a lock, Canon. Every zoom lens should have a lock. Just had to get that out. It's super important. Very super important. Yeah, such a good lens. 24-105, like the most underrated RF lens, in my opinion.